Present. Trustee Pizzotti?
Present.
And I too am present. And we're waiting on President Wong, who should be here shortly. Okay, we now have our public comments, and I'm going to first read our disclaimer. Members of the public may address the board on topics of our board agenda, in addition to topics that are under the jurisdiction of the board and are not on the agenda. Although the board by law may not take action at this meeting, under board policy, the board may limit the total time for public input on any topic to 20 minutes. We will do that today. It will be 20 minutes, unless it chooses to waive the item limit for a particular item. Individual speakers may be provided up to 3 minutes to comment on any topic, unless amended. Public comments consisting of individual charges, complaints, or derogatory remarks about any district employee are requested to be submitted in writing to the administration in accordance with the district's complaint procedure. As such, the board reminds the public that the district has existing board policy that allows the public to lodge a complaint against a district employee. This policy provides a comprehensive procedure for reviewing and responding to public complaints. This process provides a more thorough opportunity to be heard than is allowed under the open meeting law that governs this meeting. The board respects the right of members of the public to speak regarding matters on the agenda and other matters within the jurisdiction of the board. However, it's important for members of the public to recognize that comments regarding students other than the speaker's own children made during a public board meeting may be legally actionable as a violation of student privacy. Both state and federal law prohibit the board and others from discussing confidential student information in open session. To this end, be advised that if you reference a student's name other than your own student, you will be out of order and your public comments may not be protected by the privileges that protect public speech. You could be found liable for such comments in legal proceedings. Furthermore, it is important for the public to understand that negative or derogatory comments made against the district, employees, or others, even those made in a public board meeting, may be actionable civil defamation. Okay, and we are going to open first with public comment. We are going to limit it to 20 minutes. And Mario, can I ask how many we have so that we know, so we can try to get through all of them?
Right now we have 5 online comments.
Okay.
Request.
Okay.
One in-person comment, in addition to pre-submitted comments.
Okay.
Confirm the board policy or the board practice if we address public comments in person first.
Okay.
Then online.
Thank you. Okay. So our preference is first to have in person, and then we'll go to online, and then we'll see how many we get through of the pre-submitted comments.
And just to confirm, is the comment duration 2 minutes or 3 minutes?
How many are pre-submitted?
Pre-submitted, there are 10.
Okay, then let's do you agree 2 minutes? Is that good with everybody? That way we can try to get through as many as possible.
3 minutes?
Two.
2 minutes.
And then, okay. Okay. So our first public speaker is Don Stoffer, and normally we have somewhere to go, but I guess you leave from there. Can we hear okay, Mr. Stoffer, if he speaks from the mic? Where's the mic?
The mics are right here and right.
I can move over.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
right over here.
Okay.
Or
In on that either way. We'll have to come up with a policy next time. But good to see you.
Thank you, trustee. And thank you, Dr. Hildreth. To say that the last 2 years have been a wild ride is probably an understatement. We have all experienced restrictions to our normal lives, and many of us have experienced sickness and loss as well. You, the trustees, have tried to steer Washington unified through this dynamic and ever-changing pandemic. You've depended upon guidance from the state and county, among other authorities. You've tried to meet the needs of West Sacramento's children, as well as the needs of your staff and greater community. It hasn't been easy. And you've been blamed for all kinds of things. Are there decisions that, in hindsight, you wish you had made differently? I'm sure there are. But I suspect that I'm not the only person to think that you have tried your best and that you have approved policies based upon the best information you've had. You've heard plenty about freedom, things like my body, my choice when it comes to vaccination. or let them breathe for mask wearing. What these miss, though, is that freedom comes with responsibility and obligation. Consider the expression, freedom isn't free. Vaccination and mask wearing have helped slow the spread of COVID. Vaccination has decreased the severity of disease for those infected. Our obligation has been to protect others, especially those who are more vulnerable. That has been your primary task, and I want to thank you for keeping that foremost in your decision-making. Thank you.
Thank you.
Done.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Stafford. And Mario, who do we have next for
Our first online public comment is from Ryan Iceberg. I will find
okay, welcome, Mr. Iceberg.
Mr. Iceberg. I've given you the ability to speak. And you may-
Thank you, Mario. Good afternoon, trustees. California's public school children and their families have paid a high price for pandemic restrictions dictated by politics and not science. To be clear, even Yolo County Health Director Amy Sisson admitted in a recent school board meeting that extended school closures were the wrong decision. The CDC made it clear on Friday that there is no distinction between schools and indoor spaces. The statewide mask mandate was lifted on February 15th, so it defies reason that California students have to wait an additional month to remove their mask if they choose. For the past 2 years, California school children have been treated in a way that does not correspond to their low risk of serious outcomes for COVID-19. As you cast your vote this afternoon, please consider the following. There is absolutely no valid reason, scientific or otherwise, for our students to wait until the 11th for mask choice. The vast majority of American school children can already attend class without a mask. Moreover, a growing number of school districts across California have already allowed their students the option of mask choice. There's no scientific justification for a student in Roseville to be able to unmask while a kid 25 minutes away in our schools cannot. This is particularly true considering that CDPH reported Yolo County's positivity rate is at 1.9%. That is the lowest among all the state's 58 counties per the SAC-B. Washington Unified kids could have the option of masking choice tomorrow with proactive leadership today. When you made the decision to allow for outdoor masking choice, you said you needed time, understandably, to properly communicate with the community. That communication came in the form of an email within 24 hours. Stop holding normal out like a carrot. You and I get the option of masking and making an informed decision about it. It's time to allow our kids to do the same. The time to return to normal is not 2 weeks from now. It's today. The kids have waited 2 years for normal. They don't need to wait another 2 weeks. We must move beyond the idea that students.
Mr. Iceberg, I apologize for interrupting. Our next public comment request comes from Amy Alfieri. Her hand was risen second. I have given her.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm here to say that I believe the school board should align with the CDC and CDPH guidelines and move to a position of recommendation rather than mandate. Children have always been low risk due to COVID, and we have also made the lowest risk and vulnerable children who also don't vote in elections bear the heaviest burdens due to school closures, learning loss, loss of extracurriculars, loss of normalcy. Masks do indeed have some downsides for children with sensory issues, hearing loss, autism, and other special needs. They impede early literacy learning, they impede social interactions, and they keep children from a much needed sense of normalcy. Kids and families should be able to freely choose masking or not masking. Adults can get up to 3 vaccines. We are immensely privileged as Americans to have access to highly effective vaccines and boosters, and we're lucky to have this access. All school-age children also have access. I have vaccinated myself, I am boosted, I vaccinated my children, and I believe that all children should have mask choice, and that families should be allowed to make this decision. So I would be asking the board to align with CDC, CDPH, and I also believe our county supervisors, based on my conversations with their representatives, are moving in this direction of recommendation rather than mandate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next public comment request came from Carrie Lindgren. To the ability to speak.
Hi, this is Carrie. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Carrie Lindgren. I'm one of the 2 school nurses for Washington Unified School District. Schools in California have been some of the safest places in our nation. And one of the biggest reasons for this is because we've had mask mandates. Throughout the nation, there have been multiple school closures this school year, and California is less than 1.2% of closures, even though we make up a huge percentage. I believe it's 12% of all students in the nation, and it's because of masking. We have a lot of students and staff members who are undergoing chemotherapy, who have cardiac conditions, who have a history of organ transplants. And we need to take our personal responsibility to keep those people safe. And while the risks for severe illness among children are low, we still have to face the burden of staffing shortages and the burden on our staff who are contact tracing and trying to find substitutes for teachers and for students who are missing learning because they were infected with COVID. So if we keep our children masked, we'll help prevent some of that learning loss. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next comment request is from Dr. Matt Caldwell. Dr. Matt Caldwell, I've allowed you the ability to speak and you may begin.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Thank you, trustees, for calling this additional meeting quickly to address this unmasking issue. I just wanted to emphasize the points that I think we can make masking optional and let the kids choose for this. Well, it is understandable that we want to protect the most vulnerable, as several of people have mentioned. I would just say that even the CDC in their Friday comments emphasized that those who want to wear a mask, can continue to do so. And that was even call us after at 1 o'clock from the state, saying, go ahead and wear one if you feel that that's a risk that you want to continue to mitigate for. Greta and Miss Eddie from the CDC said, people who wear high quality masks are well protected, even if others are not masking around them. So I think I encourage you to make masking optional. The California guidance does not require exclusion from the classroom or any disciplinary action for students who choose not to wear a mask. So all you have to do is say the guidance is this, but we're going to make it optional and go with that. I appreciate your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Caldwell. The next comment is from Andy Domek. I've allowed you the ability to speak.
Great, thank you. My comment's a little bit disjointed. There wasn't a lot of notice, so I had to put this together pretty quick. I'm not really sure what the rush is. Kids have been masking all year, and it just seems like this was a bit rushed. So my first request is to slow down a little and really consider the effects of removing masks inside schools. Because, sure, Omicron 1.0 seems to be fading, but Omicron, the next generation, is just getting started. I hope it doesn't go anywhere, but anyone who tells you they know the course of this is either misinformed or not telling the truth. And I don't think we really want to leave kids exposed to this before we know where it's headed. And I don't think I'm the only one in our district concerned about this. In fact, the recent LA Times Berkeley poll found that 61% of California parents were in support of masking in class through the end of the year. And I have no reason to suspect our district would be any different. And if you're really concerned with equity, I'd encourage you to dig deep into that data to see what underrepresented communities actually had to say about it. Further, peer pressure is a real thing, and I'd be surprised if bullying didn't increase once we have masking become optional for everyone. But remember, for some people, masking isn't really optional. To those kids with siblings too young to be vaccinated, many families won't consider masking optional. To kids with asthma or other airway disorders, like mine, masking is not optional. To kids with vulnerable family members, masking isn't optional. So really, masking is optional for those who have been the luckiest. People who got COVID, but got better. People who managed to avoid COVID. people with enough sick leave to deal with multiple cases of COVID in a household. In short, we're taking masks off to reward the already privileged. Again, 61% of California parents support masking. Maybe WUSC parents are different, but I don't know because we haven't been surveyed. And I'd like to know what our teachers think too. COVID doesn't really care whether we're tired of masking.
I apologize for interrupting, Mr. Dummett, but the 2 minutes were up. The next
Thank you.
comment is from Candy Santos. What's next in line? I have given her the ability to speak and she may begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to reiterate that we need to get rid of these mask mandates for our children immediately. Our children have been deprived of oxygen for 6 to 8 hours a day for 5 days a week with little scientific basis to support such drastic measures. We've already seen all this. We've also looked at all these statistics that show that masks don't work. There's not one peer-reviewed study that has come back to show the effectiveness and the efficiency of masks. None of you have brought one forth yet. None of these people that have spoken have brought one. There is not one peer-reviewed document that it shows any studies that have come back to show that these masks are working. They're not working, but they do have reports and studies proving that they don't work. We've already seen those. Everybody's seen those. The CDC talks about them. We need to get them off of our kids. If you want to put them on your kids, then put them on your kids, but it's child abuse. Doctors have already been saying that it's child abuse. You guys are mandated reporters. Well, teachers are mandated reporters. Who's calling CPS? Who's calling the police? Somebody needs to stand up for these kids. These are my grandkids. These are my kids in this district. I have had 10 children go through this district. This is ridiculous. If people want to put masks on their kids, let parents be parents and put masks on their kids. But we are done with it. No more masks. We don't need to make 2 weeks. We don't need to wait one more day. They're done. Get it off of them. Let's be mature. Let's look at real results, real peer-reviewed studies, and that's what we use. Not all this BS that we see on the MSN news. It's all lies, propaganda. If we go to CDC website, you go look at some of these websites and the real statistics, you will find the real truth that they're not telling you. Please, if you guys are into this critical thinking, go do some research and stop relying on somebody to tell you to let our kids go. Those CDC and NIH, they don't care about your kids or my kids. I care about my kids.
Sorry to interrupt, Candy, but 2 minutes were up. Thank you for your comment. Our next request is from Kenna J. She was next in line as far as comment requests came in. Kenna J, I have given you the ability to speak and you may begin.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm driving kids to sports, so let's see how this works. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy, but I'm going to keep this rather simple. You're going to be presented with a lot of data, more so a lot of emotion. As you sift through it, just stay in the guidelines you've already said. California is gone way too long. It's unacceptable. There's no reason to wait any longer for our kids. If you look in the last 2 weeks since you've taken off masks outside, cases stayed the same. This isn't going to change having an option. We're pushing for an option. There's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with the option to keep it on, but there's something wrong with not giving the option to take it off. Kids that are compromised, they would have had them on regardless. And I've shared with you as a nurse, this isn't making sense anymore because we get the data and the data is suggesting it's time. It's past time. These kids need to go forward. These kids need to stop living in fear. And these kids need to learn how to do social cues and recognize all of this. Please keep emotion out of it. If you're going to align by the state, which you have claimed all along, you need to be doing this now. This vote needs to happen now. And unfortunately, 2 weeks is still too long. Districts are going against this, and those district data are coming out okay. It's okay to choose. And anyone else that's going to mention this bullying, if you can provide any statistics on districts that have been unmasked that have had bullying, that'd probably be supportive, but there is none. There is none changing except for the fact that you have happy kids, and my kids don't recognize a difference when they're at school, except for the fact that they don't have headaches any longer. Thank you for your time. Please consider all options and please keep emotion out of this and consider the best source, the greater good for our children. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you, Kenna. Our next request came from Patrick Doman. Patrick, I've allowed you the ability to speak.
All right, thank you. That's me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I teach sixth grade at Stonegate Elementary. I am also in favor of keeping more stringent measures in place, even after March 11th. I know that might be kind of unpopular. I don't have a whole lot of facts on hand, but I do have a lot of anecdotes. Just this past week, we did have 2 cases at Stonegate, and without masks, we'd have quite a lot more kids that would be sick. And kids need to be in school. And if they're quarantining, if half the class is missing, like some of those moments back in January, they're missing out on their education. So I'm really hoping you guys will take that into consideration. I also am in favor of a survey sending to teachers, also to parents, to just get a feel for what people are thinking. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next request in line is from James Schwab. James Schwab, I believe.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Calling in support of more stringent mask mandates following March 11th. I have a first grader at Southport Elementary School. I have 2 younger children who are too young to be vaccinated. I don't understand how the policy would be implemented given half the students are currently unvaccinated. How do you pick or choose and monitor students and enforce a mask mandate where unvaccinated students have to wear masks and vaccinated students don't need to? It seems like an unwieldy policy and an unsafe policy, and I urge you to keep strict mask mandates after March 11th. Thank you.
Annie Chisholm is next in line. Annie, I've allowed you to.
Hi, thank you. My name is Annie Chisholm. Thank you for taking my public comment. I agree with the last caller. First and foremost, I'm really concerned because we do have such a low vaccination rate among our students, and to provide equal protection for everyone. I even have had students who have wanted to get the vaccination, but are unable to get that because of differing opinions of their guardians or caregivers. And so we need to think about the students that wish to have protection, but are also being denied because they don't have that right to get it because of their age. The other thing I want you to consider is all of the employees, whether they're admin, WSTA, or CSEA staff. Many of us are vaccinated. I'm vaccinated, but I'm concerned for those of us that aren't able to get vaccinated for either medical reasons or for those of us that are caregivers for family members that are either immunocompromised or are ineligible to get the vaccine. I fall in that category, so I am very concerned about bringing it home to my husband, because even with the vaccine, he does not have the protections he needs to protect himself from the severity of the disease. So I think in the name of public health, we need to make a public health decision on what's best for all, and not give in to what's inconvenient for others. Thank you.
I do show a hand risen, but we have reached the 20-minute mark, Vice President. So it's.
Okay, so, and we have quite a few that were written, but I'd ask that you can email the board so that we can all see those and have them for the record. Committed to 20 minutes at the beginning of this and reduced to 2 minutes per person so that we can get through. Okay.
That was the 20 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So to anyone else that would like to have their voice heard, you can certainly email the board and we will read it. No sure of that. Okay. So we're going into, thank you to everyone who called in and to everyone who wrote in and to our guests who came in as well. We're now moving into board discussion. This is not board action, but board discussion. The board discussion on revised California Department of Public Health guidelines. Dr. Hildreth.
Thank you, Vice President. Early evening, trustees, and thank you for your commitment to serving all of the students and staff, and community here in West Sacramento. We've asked that the board have this discussion regarding updates on the California Department of Public Health guidelines. We know that as a board, since March of 2020, we have come together at regular board meetings, special board meetings, emergency board meetings, all trying to do what is best for our students, all knowing that none of us are health experts, but we do the best that we can with the information that we have. And one of those marks of, as we have been making decisions has been looking at guidance. And so I know that you were asked yesterday to come today to a special board meeting, and really because we want to make sure that we are having discussions as soon as possible. And we had heard that the governor and CDPH was going to announce K-12 masking indoor requirements or changes that would go into effect March 1st. And so the need for having a special board meeting today was because until 11 o'clock today, we thought the guidance for schools would be March 1st. However, as we have all been tracking the news today, we see that at 11 a.m., Governor Newsom's press release was stating that on March 1st, masks will no longer be required for unvaccinated individuals, but will be strongly recommended for all individuals in most indoor settings. So the March 1st date was for all indoor settings, and there was an update that the indoor masks for K-12s would become a strong recommendation effective after 11:59 p.m. on March 11th. And so we wanted to provide time to have a discussion about what that will mean for our students and our community. Again, that we heard from the governor's office at 11 a.m. At 1 p.m., we heard that CDPH released information saying pretty much the same thing that the governor had shared, where for K-12 schools, that would be after March 11th. And there was also confirmation that there is not a distinction between vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals in the new state policy. At 4:23 p.m., Yolo County released a press release that states the following. Starting March 1st, the state of California has announced a strong recommendation for both vaccinated and unvaccinated persons to mask in indoor public places. Mask requirements will end except for healthcare, long-term care, correctional, childcare, and K-12 school, emergency shelter, and public transportation settings. Starting March 12th, the state will strongly recommend masking in K-12 schools and childcare facilities, removing the current masking requirements. Yolo County continues to align with the state masking guidelines. So we have now received information today from the state, from the governor's office, from California Department of Public Health, and now from Yolo County, with Yolo County's recommendation being that it will align with the state guidelines, which is a strong recommendation to mask in indoors, but it will no longer be a mandate. So with that, I ask you to open up for discussion on the direction that you would like the district to move forward with this particular issue.
You want to go?
This is medical.
Okay.
All right, okay. Trustee Pizzotti?
Yeah, so I was reading that earlier today, the recommendation. It did say strongly recommended for indoor masking. What really kind of struck me more was that when we heard this public comments, we generally are hearing from the same folks. You know, they email, they call it's the same group of people. What I want to hear from and I would really appreciate if we could reach out in a survey, is from the families in, the Westfield area, the Riverbank, the Elkhorn, Westmore Oaks. We keep hearing from Stonegate, Southport, and Bridgeway. We're not hearing anything from the other schools. And what's kind of ironic was when I looked at the numbers on our vaccination rates amongst students, River City, by the way, is doing fairly well at 42%, but Riverbank 15.7, Riverbank 6 through 8, 36.7, Elkhorn 11.39, 6 through 8, Elkhorn 11.79, Westfield 19.74, Westfield 6 through 8, 15.21, Westmore Oaks 25.7, Westmore Oaks 40.6 through 8, 40.4, Stonegate 8.42, Stonegate 6 through 8, 11.63, Southport 1.9, Southport 6 through 8, 4.3, Bridgeway K5 is 5.2, Bridgeway 6-8 is 15.9, Washington Middle College is 4.62, and then WUVA is the online school, for an average of 21%. It's striking that the schools in the north are doing better with their vaccinations than the schools in the south. And yet the schools in the south are the ones that are constantly calling and emailing and being vocal. I want to hear from, the schools in the north and the families from the north area and see what they think. So I like the idea of sending a survey to not only the families, the staff, but also the students, and hear what they have to say. And for those that have said, masking there's no bullying going on with kids that wear their masks outdoors. That's not true. My daughter just this week, or not just this week, but last week, because this week seems to be blurring together. Just last week was being teased because she was in a minority of kids wearing their masks on the playground. So I don't want to hear that it doesn't happen, because it absolutely does. And removing masks indoors, I think, is probably going to exacerbate that if we remove that requirement, because there's going to be peer pressure. So, I mean, I understand where a lot of people are going to come from, but that's not an argument that I would say holds a lot of value, in my opinion. I think we have until March 12th, at the very least, to do a survey and to find out where our families were. There was that Berkeley poll that said 61%, that's a statewide poll. 61% of families still supported through the end of the year, masking. So I would just like to see us, if our families and our staff and our students feel differently, then I'm all in favor of, making it optional. But if the majority of our families say, no, let's keep the masks on, we're, 3 months away from the school ending and start afresh in the new year, then I'm fine with that. Either way, I just like to get the pulse of our community before we do a decision.
All right, thank you, Trustee Passati. Another trustee?
Go ahead, Al.
Okay.
I don't mind.
Okay.
I don't really know. I mean, I could talk for like an hour about it, but I won't, because I do feel like it's a very arbitrary time to well, I've always thought that the masking is arbitrary, but that's because in my training, it's very clear that N95 spit tested is what keeps you from getting a respiratory disease. I was taught over and over, shown studies in nursing school, you never walk into a tuberculosis patient's room or a pneumonia patient's room without an N95. And here we're saying COVID is more contagious than pneumonia. So to me, it feels very arbitrary and confusing. Also in the beginning, we were told this is so contagious, you're all gonna die, oh my God. And we were very scared as a family, we were very scared. And then as data came out and a lot of anecdotal in my case, because I deal with it on a daily basis, the testing company, but 2 of us got COVID the first go around and 2 of us didn't, all 4 unvaccinated, which was weird because we didn't do anything different inside. But, this time, one who had COVID in the beginning didn't get it again. I'm vaccinated, and the youngest who isn't, or the younger one who isn't, got COVID. So it's just so, and so did I. And so it's just so arbitrary to me still. I'm seeing potential data that it does lessen the severity. And in that case, I feel like, okay, great. So it lessens the severity, get vaccinated, get your booster, do what you need to do to keep yourself safe. Our hospitals can handle it at this point. On the other hand, I have many friends who are very taxed and stressed, and it breaks my heart. Like, friendships are different. I've lost friends to COVID or family, not friends. I've known young people who have died, vaccinated and unvaccinated. Not friends again. I've known people, patients of mine. I've seen a person die who got the vaccine. It's all so bizarre to me. And there's such heated feelings surrounding it, which also crushes me because I don't see the data, and I just don't understand why we're getting so upset without appropriate data. And what we do know is that a properly fitted N95 mask protects you, not everyone else, you, from getting whatever disease you're trying not to get. So you're vaccinated, you're boosted, you're wearing the appropriate mask. This, again, does nothing. I wear it because I have to, right? I personally am not afraid to take it off because I don't know what else. Maybe I am afraid. Maybe I still am afraid. When I had COVID, I was like, what's going to happen? I was very nervous. I don't want anyone in my family to get it. I don't want any of you to get it. I don't want our students or our teachers to get it. But we live here in this community with this viral illness that's going to be with us forever. And I honestly don't know what else to do. I think we have taken the measures that we can to keep ourselves safe. And I think if you are still that person who's, I don't even want to be around a kid with a runny nose. So if you're still sending your kid to school sick, you're still not being very nice to other people, But again, the surgical masks that our kids are wearing, the cloth masks, they're not doing anything. I know they're not. I've seen the studies. But I don't know what else to say, or I don't know. So I'm in favor of it being optional. I wish we could do it today. I have a feeling I might be the only one, but I am not willing to go to lengths. I'm not willing to let it destroy any of relationships or, that is where I am. And I think that we need to get bullying. You're absolutely right. Lucy told me they're making fun of kids on the playground, and we have to do better. This is not okay, but it's going to happen. We are not going to wear masks for the rest of our lives. We're not. I can guarantee you that. So when it happens, as a community, we have to figure out how to be nice to each other and how to teach our kids to be nice to other kids. And when we see it, intervene appropriately. And we have to make decisions that are smart and that are well informed. If the news tells you something, look into it. Look at the studies. Look at the peer-reviewed studies that Emory University told me to review, right? I was not like, it just sometimes is mind boggling to me because I'm not seeing the facts to support these masks. And we call them another mitigation factor, but how could they be? I don't think it like takes one droplet and like divorces the rest of the virus. Like I've never been taught that way. So we talk about like public health too. And it's like, what about our mental health of our kids? Like, I don't know. I mean, there are kids who are suffering with this. And I guess I just feel like, you know, I'm lucky that mine aren't. I'm lucky that mine don't care. They really don't care. My kids could be in or out of a mask, but you know, they don't care. I think probably most don't, but some do. And we're not thinking about them either. And so, you know, it really, really stinks that we have COVID. I hate it. It really stinks that there are a lot of people who are at risk. I hate that for them too. I'm a nurse because I want you to be healthy and happy. But I think unfortunately, if you really want to protect yourself, you're going to have to wear the mask, properly fitted. And I think that's all that we can do at this point until there's some miracle cure, if there ever is. But we don't really have that. So that's where I stand, and that's why. I hope I covered everything because I think I've done a lot. I know that I've done a lot of research. It's become like, I hate that I wake up and think about what else is available to read about COVID. And I can understand what they're saying. I've heard podcasts, I've heard both sides. And I just think this is where we are.
Thank you. Welcome, President Wong. I see the name.
Yeah, so thank you, Christy, for that. I wanted to hear your perspective, seeing it, being able to trust somebody that is day in and day out experiencing it. So thank you for what you do. This is where I would really love to hear the teacher's voice. You know, they have to be in that room teaching our youth. That's a voice, of course, parents, but our teachers that are there day in and day out and are seeing the numbers and are seeing the students be absent and are seeing they're feeling the anxiety in the room and they're actually dealing with it and they're navigating with it, right? Every single day. It's I think, again, I don't want to be faced with, let's avoid what's going to happen. Let's avoid bullying. Like if it happens, how do we deal with it? How do we process it? It happens in schools every day. And if it's not one thing, it's going to be another, right? I work in school, so I can speak about that piece. Bullying it happens, right? So I'm not going to use bullying as a marker to not make a decision, if that kind of makes any sense. Like it's the processing piece. We can't protect our students from themselves in a sense. So this is where I would really like to hear the teacher's voice, because I want our teachers to feel heard in all of this. They're the ones that are going to, again, process and navigate with all of this. That's one. The other that honestly, it's to Christy's point, from the mental standpoint, not confusing our children, more our youth. You know, if you go to a restaurant and you're inside, you can have a mask off. But if you're in classroom, you can't. Like you can, but you can't. Like there's just, what world are they? What are they experiencing? Really, is my question. Is the sense of normality, the sense of if I'm indoors in certain spaces, I can, but when I go to school, it's a no. Just kind of, again, what we're doing as a whole and not confusing. That's upsetting a little bit. You know, it was I know it was months back, but you know, in line at the airport, it was 6 feet apart, but then you're sitting next to the person, right? It's kind of like, man, are we just reading the poster and doing, and I get it. But it's upsetting when being in a position to lead, it's upsetting that we feel sometimes like we're following and sometimes but we are doing our best. That's from the comments that I heard today. I truly appreciate the public saying and expressing that. As you know, there's parents up here, there's people that work with your students, and just, we really do care. I guess if, you know, the option piece, I'm always in favor of people making a decision and living with it. I know it can be difficult. I know if it doesn't happen today, but there's going to be, those conversations between parents and their children and why I know the why they're wearing the mask or why you got vaccinated. There's got to be a why behind it. I think every family made their decision based on their why, based on their reason to or not to. And I think that we come up with that decision again is why make it mandatory to wear a mask inside when, to Chrissy's point, is every child wearing an N95? Is the teacher wearing an N95? And why not make it optional? There's going to be many reasons both ways, but I'm going to go with the option inside just because of the confusion from the community. Because I'm seeing it. I go out and I see community and I see people inside not wearing masks, and I see. And I see it, basketball and then certain sports not being masked and certain sports being masked. And it just continues to, again, be confusing. And I think that optional and making that clear and feeling strong in your decision is important for our families to be, again, in that position to make that decision, as challenging as it may be. So that's
So I apologize for being late. I was in an assembly budget hearing panel, was asked to be on a panel for the Children, Youth and Behavioral Health Initiative, which I know is also important as we are talking about social emotional learning and making sure that is a smooth transition. So I completely apologize that you elected can talk a long time about things. So I apologize. So I'll take it over on facilitation. And I know you are probably eager as a facilitator to also share your thoughts. So I will move it over to you, Vice President Kirby Gonzalez. So
all gone. Yep. So I appreciate this. I appreciate the hearing what both Clerk Venegas and Trustee Pizzotti talked about with hearing from our staff. I think it is important to survey teachers, classified families, and students because regardless of the timing of this, I think it's important for community to be able to make the best decision possible for them. And that's data that we all need to have. And I wouldn't want us to wait on that. I'd like that to be, I know other districts are already presenting that data to staff or to their boards. So I want us to work with a sense of urgency to get some of that information from them. I would recommend. We can't, there is a state mandate. And so there's some rules about, of course, when we work on this, but there's a lot of moving parts. For example, school buses are public transportation. So we need to get information on that. And what is that going to look like? We can assume that they're going to be masked at this point until guidance comes on that without the option. There are current isolation and quarantine procedures in place that you can come back masked. And so we need to know what that will look like. So there are a lot of moving parts of this, but I think it's going to take some time to see until quarantine changes, testing of unvaccinated employees, all of these types of things. I think we can assume that they're in place as we wait to get more information. I just anecdotally, because we shared this a little bit, I've been in the room for hours in the classroom with students who have tested positive, and I do attribute high quality masks and the filtration to being the reason that I did not get that as a close contact and others did not. And so I'm very proud of this district for having high quality masks that fit well for our kids and for our staff if they request. So I think some important things we need to do is get survey data. I think we need to start working to really communicate with our community on how to get these masks, especially because we know that it is a financial burden for some families. And so they need to know that you have access to a high quality mask if you want it, especially.
As she's coughing on us.
So glad I have this on.
I tested 2 days ago.
I think these vaccine numbers that I'm seeing here are very alarming. And I also question currently if they're fully accurate, because I do know that we're relying on families to put it into areas, and that's very challenging. So I'd say right now a big push is our COVID clerks like thankfully our COVID numbers are low right now. Maybe they can help get this in. But we've got to have accurate data for our families to know, for our families, our students, and our educators. I think about our SCC preschool families, you know, our children who are too young to be vaccinated, and what that looks like. So that's going to be another layer that I'm looking forward to getting more information on. And then, of course, talking to our kids and preparing them for what it looks like, masking and not. I mean, this is where we are with the state recommendation, with our county recommendation, we've been following the health recommendations. And so we need to be, I feel, preparing to go in that direction, but we have got to communicate with them. It is confusing because this morning, and maybe even right now, you go on Yolo County's website and we're at high transmission. But now there's a new color chart and we're at suddenly medium. Medium. It's now high, medium, or low. And now it's okay to not have a mask in. So this is a constantly moving target. I think that's the hardest part about being here is that in education, especially with big change, we believe in educating, preparing our kids for big change. And these decisions that just get thrown at us in huge changes quickly are very challenging. So it has to be translated, of course, too. So those are my big pieces. I agree with the survey. I agree with really a push for vaccine numbers. So our families can make the best decision for them with the most data and our students. We need to hear from our staff. I've bought a few dinners now for a staff member in Washington Unified who has long COVID and who's struggling to come back to work. I mean, it is very, as we all know, real. Washington Unified has lost parents and grandparents and staff members. And so this has impacted our kids. And so we have to be incredibly sensitive, I think, in our language to all of that. I was at Westfield last week and almost every child I saw outdoors, even though it was optional, was in a mask. Mm-hmm. So I think that we have to just be very sensitive to all of this. So I think that those are my pieces in terms of the priorities that I think are important as we move to this conversation.
Okay, I missed a large part of it, so I apologize, but I was listening on the way here when the comments began with Trustee Pizzotti, so I was able to hear. But legally, I could not participate because it's a violation of the Brown Act. So I want to be clear, I did not violate the Brown Act if our attorneys are watching and will be watching later. So with that said, it was fascinating coming from this budget hearing to here because I think what SSPI Thurman kind of led with was we had about 140,000 children who've lost parents, right? Which is like contextually with millions of students. But the question is, how do you actually address the trauma that is experienced from the death, but also everything else that's around the fear that is around that? So how do we move through this moment and this period? I think that data is good, but I was thinking something when you both were talking. It's like, well, the kids are unmasked outside. They come in, the spread is kind of similar, right? Even outside, it's less. And so they come in. I think it's challenging. I understand the concerns with staff. I do want to just be clear with providing staff direction, the ability to follow state and county guidelines, right? Like that, to be clear, that's what I think I also hear people reiterating. Using data to actually, using the survey data to inform your decisions as you are trying to figure out how you're going to roll out optional masking, if that is what the state and county is recommended. Right, so that's what I'm hearing. I could be hearing from majority, right? Like not everybody, but hearing from majority of folks that we do want to follow state and county guidelines.
State and county recommendation is strongly recommending for masking.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
Right, guidelines.
Like there's a lot of politics involved in that too. And so they strongly recommend it so they can optionally mask.
Right, so, sorry, I don't need to. No, that's okay. I just
want to make a clarification that from my point that others might have different, yes, the data is for the district to inform, but it's also just really for our families.
Yeah.
So that it gets to our families early enough to help them make a decision.
Correct. So both transparency in terms of their own decisions on masking or not masking, and staff masking or not masking. I also agree that the data is probably missing data. For example, I know the district probably has vaccination day for one child, but not the other who got vaccinated later. So they don't have that. So I actually probably think that the vaccination numbers are lower, to be really direct with you, because I am one of those people who didn't actually update my vaccination information now. Yes, I've totally broken HIPAA and told everybody my children's health records data.
It's okay if it's your own kid.
But publicly, but it's, yeah, and she's a minor. So actually the 12-year-old, it totally broke HIPAA. Totally broke HIPAA. Forgot about that in a social work school. Medical records.
We can share our own children's.
No, she's 12.
I'm sharing that my children are 8 and 10.
8 and 10, you're okay. It's the 12-year-old.
Oh,
It's the 13-year-old. So anyways, now that you all know, because they have control of their own medical records. And so in any case, so I, like, for example, my point is that I am pretty sure that these vaccination numbers are lower than, because I can have contributed to the lower numbers. So I am okay with moving forward with whatever the state and you all would make that decision. I think other districts around here have allowed the superintendent to make those decisions. And if others are good with that, I would propose that instead of coming back to the board again.
I would like to see the numbers before I make a decision on whether or not to move in a particular direction on making it optional or not. So I would personally like to see that. So that may be different than what you're all asking about. Also, what I'd also like to see is that we open up the ability for parents, if they're not comfortable now with indoor masking, to have the ability to go to the virtual academy.
I think that's always an option.
No, it's not. It hasn't been. I've been told by parents that they wanted to make a change, but it was mid-semester, so they couldn't do that. So that was a concern for them. So I would at least like to give people, if that's the direction that the board decides to go, is to making it optional. I would object to that unless we get data from our families that say yes, that's the direction they would like us to go. Our students, staff, and families that say yes, that's where they would like to go. But if that is the case, that's the way that the board wants to go, is that they want to make it optional or give direction to the superintendent to make the choice herself, then I would say, let's make sure that, you know, WUVA has the capabilities to take in new families that may not want to put their kids at risk.
Does that feel comfortable to the rest of the board, or direction? Yeah, direction. It's not a decision, it's just direction today.
I would be okay with that. I don't know that there can be that many people who would opt to transfer mid-semester, but there could be. And if I just wouldn't want to overload our teachers and if there's like
capacity issues at WUVA.
I don't know what capacity they would even have. I would say there's probably, if that does happen, it wouldn't be more than a handful of students, but
That shouldn't be a problem. That's info we can gather. To your point, that is what we have to look at in terms of WUVA is staffing.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a class size, ratio.
Right.
So if parents, and we will check, and I will get parents have been told, we can't take you right now. It could be because you're on a waiting list. Because we are maxed out in WUVA, that could be. So I don't want any family to think we don't want to accommodate their needs. It's more of just an understanding of, just as you would have at our non-virtual academy schools, we have class size limitations that we have to follow. So I will get more information, at least on that part of virtual academy. If there was a parent who wanted to move into the virtual academy at this point, would they be able to, or would it be a wait list, or just what it would be? Some people know.
Well, they were making, and the reason why I say this is because they made their determination not to switch mid-semester because it was, masks were required. The elements appear to be changing now. So their decision is, hey, I would really like to know how many of our families are going to be pulling their masks off their kids. And is that number going to be high? If it is high, then I don't want to run that risk with my own child, and I need to put them somewhere else. They made that decision because it wasn't mid-semester when they made that, or it was mid-semester. When the semester started, masking was in place. There was no option. It was what it was, right? Now we're midway through and they don't have that option potentially right now. So I appreciate what you're saying is that we'll get the information, but what if we can't? All of this is very rushed. And that's my point, is that we're going very quickly to March 12th. And I would prefer that we just take a minute. We've been, this long with masks on. Let's make sure that we're prepared fully for taking this off, and let's get the pulse of our community and make sure that's what they want us to do.
All I'm saying is I trust staff to advise us on what that looks like.
So what we will be able to do based on trustees' conversations, we will do a poll of the community that includes our parents and our staff.
And our students.
So that we have an understanding of that information. We can provide that update to the trustees no later than the board meeting. We have a regular board meeting on
On the
March
10th, right.
So we can give that update. We will also continue to do another communication push about asking parents to upload the vaccine information for their children. We have received feedback of ways where if parents have a question or are not sure what to do, how we can assist in that. So we know our staff is working on that information. I do want to just say an extra special thanks to our health aides and our office staff who have, since we knew things were changing, have been diligently uploading information, assisting parents when they call. And on top of just what parents are submitting, the state does have a database of all persons who are vaccinated. It goes through a state database. And so our staff is even looking at that site. But all of these things are just a bit time consuming. But I do want everyone to know that is how serious our staff takes trying to get the information that we all want to see to be able to make such serious decisions. So we will do that communications push and continue to ask parents to give us that information so that our community can make decisions that they feel are in the best interest.
I'm not sure, is the direction clear, and is there majority agreement that we trust staff to make informed decisions on when to go by state guidelines?
I am not clear. I'm clear that the direction that I'm hearing is to follow the state guidelines. But is that do not follow state guidelines until after the data is presented? Just want to make sure.
I think that it informs your decision. So that the comment is to make sure the decision is the data is open so parents and community can make their, students and families can make their decisions.
Then I'm clear.
Okay.
Wait, what? I'm not sure I understand now.
So the clarification was that the data, we need the data so that students and families can make their decisions of optional masking. Right. So not necessarily for us to make that decision. It is at least majority, I heard majority are in favor of supporting state guidelines, but also we also want to provide the data so that parents and students can make their own decisions about optional masking,
But
including
but the
enrollment and
district,
move out.
but the guidelines or the recommendations say strongly recommend indoor masking for schools. Now, are they talking to school districts or are they talking to individuals when they say that?
March 12th, I'm sure that there will be guidelines around school systems.
Okay, so then again, I'm still unclear. I mean, it says for schools, it's still strongly recommended that we are masked, right?
Yes.
Are they talking to LEAs when they say that, or are they talking to individual family members when they say that?
Well, since they left out strongly recommend that districts make the decision for the students, I'm gonna go with individuals.
Okay, I didn't read it that way, but I guess maybe that's where the confusion is.
They removed the mandate, yes. Vice President Kirby Laws, they removed the mandate.
I know they removed the mandate. The mandate was removed, but if they're saying we're going.
Not today, not today.
Going based on
Your
recommendation.
point, Vice President Kirby Laws in a couple of weeks. We just never know. It's a moving target.
Right, we're going based on recommendations now, because there isn't going to be guidance anymore. It's just going to be recommendations. And the recommendation is that we're strongly recommending that masks still remain indoors. So, or in schools. So, I mean, to me, that says you're in a school, you should be masked. So that's the way I read it, is that the schools themselves, it said schools, like plural. It didn't say individuals. It
So
said
would it help to
schools.
get a legal interpretation of said statement?
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
And I think having an update before the 10th is helpful for us. So if we can have an update of progress and conversations with the county would be helpful as you go, not just waiting until the 10th.
Yeah, so it seems to be a legal interpretation clarification question.
So my, moving forward, other than getting the poll, updating the vaccines, we'll also be providing the board with an update of this information that we have received, including consulting with our legal counsel on the strongly recommended, meaning a district, or is that meaning an individual? That's a question. I just want to make sure I'm asking legal the correct question.
Well, let me
I
read
think
it.
Marie will probably review this question specifically too. This recording.
Let's see. Okay, as of March 11th, masks will not be required, but strongly recommended in schools
But not required.
and child care facilities. Right. No, this is removing the mandate. Now it's just going to be recommendations from here on in. And it just said that in schools, it's recommended. So my interpretation of that is that we're going to be following recommendations, and recommendations are saying strongly recommend.
Okay, what is your question? Individuals, we strongly recommend individuals to wear masks. I think that's
right. I just want to be sure the.
Okay.
So that's the question, is that
It
the
didn't say
strongly
individuals.
recommendation.
Nowhere in there
or
did it
strongly-
say individuals.
So that's the confusion, right? That it's saying that it's removing the mask mandate for schools, but then there's the strongly recommended confuses. There's a need for clarification for what's strongly recommended if you're removing a mask mandate. Right, so it says we're removing the mandate, but we strongly recommend.
Right.
So I hear a clarification for what does that legally mean? That it's not required, it's not mandated.
We don't have
to. Strongly recommended.
Right. It's saying we don't have to follow it, but it's saying also, are we going to follow recommendations? Is that what our our group as a whole is going to be doing. Are we going to buck recommendations, or are we going to follow recommendations? And that's kind of what I was taking this, is we would always follow recommendations and guidance. In fact, it says that in the contracts. In both CSEA and WSJ's contract, is that we would follow the guidance and recommendations. So that's I guess that's my question, is when it says schools, it doesn't say individuals.
Is the question clear for you, Dr. Hildreth, to go back to the attorneys to ask for clarification?
I believe so, and if not, I can always reach out for more clarification based on what the attorney is asking me.
Yeah. I do have concern about kids' constitutional rights of what we put in the, I know we didn't talk about this. We probably didn't talk about this. Okay. She's like, bothers me.
Is there something you want to add to the attorneys?
Yeah, that's a closed session conversation. Because feels like it's a foul to constitutional.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Yeah. Okay. With that said, I think anything else? Any points of clarification from staff about directions? Okay. With that, I think we've dispensed of the agenda and we have adjourned. Okay.